So in part 2 of these heating curve videos, we are going to take a look at the math that's involved in calculating the energy changes. So the energy needed to do any of these transitions, if you remember from our conversation this week, is Q. Q is the energy. And then in order to figure out what's happening, we need constants. So there's actually quite a few constants, energy constants, that we're going to use in order to do any sort of temperature change. When all we're doing is increasing the temperature of the substance, you may remember that C, so Q is energy, C is the heat constant called specific heat. Specific heat is what you use when all you're doing is changing the temperature of a substance. So you're increasing its kinetic energy. So this is the kinetic energy constant. So whenever you're just changing the temperature of a material, specific heat is the heat constant that you want to use. So specific heat has the units typically joules per gram degree Celsius. And that's going to come in, that's going to help us, those units are going to help us figure out what the equation should be. The other heat constants that we need to use are those at the plateaus. So there's actually two different ones, but because, remember we talked about anytime you're breaking bonds, you're dealing with something called enthalpy, so it's given a delta H. Well, the enthalpy at the plateau between solid and liquid is called the delta H, the enthalpy of fusion. So that's the heat constant when you are taking a solid to a liquid or a liquid to a solid. So that's the heat constant to be back and forth between the solid-liquid phase. The upper one is called the heat of vaporization because we're turning it into a gas. Oops, you can't quite see that. There we go. So the heat of vaporization is the heat constant that you're going to use, and again, it's a numerical value when you're taking something from a liquid to a gas or vice versa. The units for both of these are typically kilojoules per mole. Sometimes you'll see it as kilojoules per gram. But more often than not, you'll see it as kilojoules per mole. So again, these units are going to come into play, helping us figure out how to solve for Q. How do we get that energy? So the value along the diagonals, the specific heat changes for the solid, the liquid, and the gas. So for any one substance, in order to calculate a heating and cooling curve, you can have as many as 5 constants involved in calculating the energy. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to calculate Q for each one of these different sections of the curve. And then if you have multiple sections involved, what do you have to do? You just have to add the energy together. So how do I figure out the energy involved at A? Well, it's a diagonal. So I've got to use the kinetic energy heat constant, which is called specific heat. You're going to see that the equation for the diagonal, the energy that's involved in doing a diagonal, and this is going to be true for both the red, the green, and the black, is going to be, since C has the units joules, grams, and degrees Celsius, energy is supposed to just be in joules. We need to multiply the specific heat by the mass and by the temp change. So the equation winds up being mc delta T. Some people will call that MCAT because the delta looks like a, but it's the mass times the specific heat times the change in temperature. And again, because specific heat is in joules per gram degree Celsius, everything will cancel out, and then you'll get a Q in joules. So this is true of also for the green and for the black. but it all depends on what state you have. So C would be for the gas in the black, C would be for the liquid in the green, and C would be for the solid in the red. So anytime you are calculating the energy of a temperature change of a substance, so we're not modifying the substance in any way, we're simply changing its temperature. So you want to heat water for a cup of tea. Water comes out of the tap at about 22 degrees Celsius. You want to heat it up to something close to 100. So all you're doing is increasing the temperature of the water. You are not doing any sort of bond breakage. Q equals mc delta T is the equation that you want to use for that. And then at the plateaus, now remember we're using these delta H values because delta H is involved when we're breaking bonds. Enthalpy is involved when bond breakage is happening. So at the first plateau, notice, remember, the units are kilojoules per mole or kilojoules per gram typically. So really all we need to do in order to get Q is to multiply the heat of fusion by either a mass or a moles. So we usually say Q equals M delta H, and in this case it's fusion. This M can be mass, but it also could be N. So this also could be Q equals N delta H of fusion, depending upon the unit. But more typically, you're going to see it Q equals M delta H, and then you can go from moles, or from grams to moles if you need to in a dimensional analysis problem. So heat of fusion at the plateau where we are melting, heat of vaporization at the plateau where we are boiling. So the equation is really no different except for the heat constant. So Q equals M delta H of vaporization, or Q equals N delta H of vaporization. So if it's kilojoules per mole, that's typically called the molar heat of vaporization. If it's grams, it'll be called the heat of vaporization. But I think pretty much in this unit we use heat of vaporization generically, and so we typically don't hear the word molar heat of vaporization. But you just got to pay attention to the units. Likewise, if you calculate these Qs in joules, like what specific heat typically is given to you, and you calculate these Qs in kilojoules, you got to be careful. If you're going to add them together, it's going to take some converting. You can't just add joules and kilojoules together directly. You've got to make sure you have all the same units. So this is a pretty easy concept as long as you pay attention to the units. You can easily calculate one area, or you could calculate 5 areas. The cooling curve that is at the bottom of your organizer looks pretty much the same thing. The calculations are all going to be the same. However, what are the only differences? Well, instead of breaking bonds, we're going to be forming bonds in a cooling curve. Instead of increasing motion, we're going to slow motion. So we're going to start at the highest energy, so no IMFAs are here with the gas. As you cool the gas, the molecules slow down. They can start forming IMFAs to solidify. So this translational motion decreases. We start forming IMFAs. Then the rotational motion slows down once we have a liquid. Then we form more IMFAs. And then finally, we're done with rotational motion, and the only thing you have left is the vibrational motion just decreasing. So you have molecules moving very little on the right, but you have them moving a lot on the left. So again, nothing's different from a heating or cooling curve other than the fact that energy is being removed and we're forming bonds and slowing motion down. So calculation-wise, everything's the same. All right, so if you have to solve a problem using all of this stuff, one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is actually draw your own heating and cooling curve. So if you have to, let's say we use water, and this is not a good marker. Let's go back to the pen. we use water, and we want to change the temperature of water from -5 degrees Celsius to 95 degrees Celsius. Okay, what I want you to do with a heating and cooling curve question like this is actually draw a very primitive version of the heating and cooling curve. So obviously, in order to solve this mathematically, you have to know what the heat values are, the heat constants. You have to know what the melting point and the boiling point are, but I picked water because hopefully you know what they are. So if we're going from here to here, how many different calculations do I need to do? Well, let's draw a heating curve to figure that out. So if I'm starting at -5 degrees Celsius, I know that -5 is below the melting point because ice melts at 0 degrees. So I'm starting in the solid phase. So the first thing I'm going to do is increase the temperature from 5 degrees to 0 degrees. That's the amount of energy. So when I calculate this point, that's the amount of energy needed to get the solid from 5 to 0 degrees. I would use the heat constant and calculate the specific heat of the solid and calculate Q. I'm not done yet though, because I have to get this water up to 95 degrees. So once I'm at 0, I have to melt the solid. So with this first calculation, I'm going to do MC delta T of the solid. For the second calculation, I need to melt it. I'm going to do M delta H of fusion to calculate the amount of energy that it takes to melt the ice. And then I have to get to 95 degrees. 95 degrees is below the boiling point. So I'm done here. My third calculation is simply MC delta T, however, of the liquid this time. I don't need to do boiling point, and I don't need to do MC delta T for gas because my temperature stops there. So what I would like you to get into the habit of doing is just drawing a very small, it doesn't have to be huge, like this is much bigger just so you can see it. Draw a small heating and cooling curve, label the important temps. At this point, 100 is irrelevant, so if you don't have it on there, that's okay. But label what the important temps are, draw the curve, and then you can see how many different calculations you need in order to solve that problem. So you've got, for homework, you've got some, or you will have, some qualitative stuff. You'll have some quantitative stuff, individual calculations, and then you'll have one problem set that asks you to draw these more complicated heating and cooling curves and do multiple calculations. Now remember, once you get these 3 calculated, all you have to do is add to get the total amount of energy needed to perform this task. All right, so come into class with any questions, and we will give you answers.